Hello everybody, I'm Dave Thomas, and today I am building the Eastwind model rocket by Sky Rockets. And as far as I can tell, this is actually a Chinese brand that's imported by Apogee Components. So they kind of sell it as one of theirs, but it's all manufactured there. The Eastwind itself is a sports scale or semi-scale version of an actual missile here. So it says based on a Chinese surface-to-air missile called the Eastwind. All right. Now this is basically the equivalent of an Estes E2X kit or a Quest Quick kit, in that the body tube is pre-colored, the fins just go together on a pre-assembled fin can. So this is a great beginner's rocket. All right. So first we'll just make sure we've got everything here. Okay, so inside the instructions we've got the parachute sheet. Alright, here we go. Alright, so parachute sheet, reinforcement discs are on that red or that yellow card there, it looks like. Shroud lines are in here, shock cords in here, the fins, the shock cord mount, the launch lug, and the engine clip, and the base to the nose cone. The nose cone is here, and then we have the fin can right here. So it looks like, if we come back to our parts list, we have everything there. So I will go ahead and clear most of this away, and we will get started. Our first part to assemble is the nose cone. So get the nose cone itself here, and then the nose cone base. First of all, put these together and make sure they fit okay. They're pretty snug, but that's alright. Alright, now, they say use plastic cement on this. I'm not sure this is polyurethane or polystyrene. It almost feels like polypropylene. And the reason I bring that up is because plastic model cement does not stick well to polypropylene. In fact, nothing sticks well to polypropylene. But since they say to use it, we'll go ahead and do it. You can either use the tube type cement or a medium viscosity brush-on cement, which is what I prefer. And I'm going to do something here just to ensure a little bit better fit, as I am kind of concerned about what this is made out of. So I'm just using an emery file here, and I'm just going to roughen up the inside of this nose cone a little bit, so the glue has something more to grip to. It feels funny to me. All right. We're just going to put a bead of glue around the inside edge there. Either type of glue is fine. Just don't get so much that if this is polystyrene, we don't want to melt it. All right, we're going to put our base on there. And that's pretty snug like that, so I'm not even going to try and turn it. And I'm just going to set this aside to dry for a few minutes. All right, next we have the tail, what they call the tail cone here. I would call a fin can. All right, whatever you want to call it. This does have a tail cone to it, so this is the tail cone, which means this is going forward. Okay, so we're going to attach this to the main body tube, and I'm going to do a dry fit here first. That's going to go up in here. Now typically I would use a gel type cement super glue on this. They're still saying to use plastic model cement, so I'm going to go with that because, well, for one thing, I'm out of gel type super glue. The same way here, I'm going to just give this a little roughening just to give that glue something more to hang on to. Now I guess if you really wanted to bind this well, you could use epoxy, but I hate making up little tiny, a bunch of epoxy and only using a little bit of it. Epoxy also gets heavy, and if you're not familiar with it, it can be a little bit dangerous to use. Okay, so again, I'm going to go with my medium viscosity brush-on cement here. You can also use, again, the tube type. Actually, I think I am going to go with the tube type this time because it's a little bit more viscous than the brush on. And I want something to hold in place there a little bit. Alright, so once again, we're just going to run an even bead all around the inside there. Okay, I'm just going to check and make sure there's nothing in particular. I'm going to put this on. Okay, now remember the tail cone's going back this way. I turn this back and forth to seat it well in the glue, and then I'm going to center this seam in between two of the fins. And I'm kind of thinking ahead. Most likely I'll put the launch lug on that seam there, and then that way it goes between two fins. Okay, so now we're going to measure 16 millimeters, or 5/8 of an inch from the base of the body tube, not from the base of the tail cone. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and use, I guess I'll use the seam as a guide for this. Alright, so 16 millimeters. I'm going to make a little mark there. And then I'm going to cut, whoops, sorry about that, people. I'm going to cut a slit at that point. That's about 1/4 or 1/8 of an inch or 3 millimeters long there. It's just the width of the engine retaining clip, which is right here. All right, it's actually a little bit narrower than normal. This reminds me of MPC kits. Okay, so we're going to put this in, and it's kind of pre-bent already to follow the shape of the tail cone. This should just pop in though, like that. And then we're going to wrap, they're using clear tape around here. So basically around this portion, and might even want to go down under that seam. Alright, let's see what I've got for clear tape. Here we go. So we've got some clear cellophane tape, and what we want to do on this is have it go at least one circumference all the way around. And unfortunately, you're probably going to trap fingerprints in there as well. So right about there. I'm just going to keep some tension on it. I am right above the seam with the fin can there. And that was the roll of tape falling on the ground next to me. Okay, and so now you'll still be able to move this out of the way to get a motor in there. So next we have the launch lug here, and normally I would put that on the same side as my engine clip, but since my engine clip is actually sticking up here, that would not be good. So instead I'm going to stick mine right along here, so in between the next two fins. Okay, so we're going to measure 110 millimeters from, in this case, from the bottom of the rocket. So from the tail cone all the way up. Right, that would be 110 right there. Now I need to move that mark over a bit so that I'm in between two of the fins. That's still not over enough. Let's go to about there. Erase the rest of that. Now usually you have a line that you can sight down, and if you wanted to you could draw a pencil line down this, but I'm noticing it doesn't erase all that well. So I think I'll just go with that. Here you can take a bit of sandpaper or an emery file again here like I've got, and I'm going to sand where this is going to come in contact with the body tube, and I'm using that seam there. Okay, I'm going to do the same thing here on the body tube itself. Just give it a little sanding. This is just giving a better place for the glue to stick. Now for this we're going to use, you can use white glue or wood glue. I don't recommend plastic cement for this one, it won't bind very well. Okay, so just an even bead of that, don't get too much. Alright, and I'm going to stick that right on my mark there. And now I'm going to sight down the rocket length. So this should be in parallel with the body tube, but currently it is not. Alright, and again we want this between two of the fins. So that looks pretty good. So at this point I'm going to just set this aside for about 10 minutes and let all of the glue dry. While we're waiting for the glue to dry on the fin can and the launch lug, I'm going to go ahead and assemble the parachute. And the first thing we need to do is cut it out of the sheet plastic that we have here. So next we've got shroud lines and these little stickers here. And I'm going to do something different with this. I've seen kits that use this method before and they always pull the shroud lines out. So the first thing I'm going to do is just see what we've got for shroud lines. Alright, so we've got 3 shroud lines already cut. That's good. So what they want us to do here is to take the end of a shroud line and kind of make a loop here, and then you take one of these self-adhesive discs and stick it on top of that. And the idea is that it will stick to the plastic and the string, and that will hold it in place. I've seen lots of that type of parachute fail. Okay, so I'm going to do this a little bit differently. You can do it that way if you want. But I'm going to go ahead and instead of just using these discs here that are solid, I'm going to use some notebook paper reinforcements. Right, you can get these things at just about any office supply store or school supply store. And so what I'm going to do is just center these one on each. Now if you don't have these, you can go ahead and use the adhesive discs that they provide, and then when you do this next step, you're just going to poke through the disc and the plastic. So now what I'm going to do is you can take a pen or a pencil, something that's pointed but blunt, and we're simply going to poke a hole through the plastic in the middle of the disc there. You don't want to use a knife for this because most likely it'll slice the disc and that will ruin its reinforcement value. Oop, almost. Yeah, I think I did tear that one. Fortunately, if you happen to tear one, you just put another piece right on top of it. Alright, so if I can tear it that easily, a knife would make it even worse. Next we're going to take one of the shroud lines here, and we're just going to tie these on with double knots, with one end at one corner and at the other end at an adjacent corner. The trickiest part here is you want to use about the same amount of string for each of your knots. All right, now don't worry if it's off a little bit, but you don't want to have a great big long free end on one and not much on the other. Now this next part you can do in one of two ways. In the instructions it has us tying the nose cone directly to the parachute here like this. Okay, so what they're doing is you get the nose cone and take your parachute here, and we're going to gather up all of the shroud line loops. I'm going to hit the camera again. There we go. Right. Now on the other hand, I'm going to grab near the middle of the parachute sheet. All right, and in this hand I've got all the loops, and then we're going to just let this pull and slide until all those corners are about in the same position like they are now. Okay, now if you want to tie this directly to the nose cone like they show in the instructions, gather the loops like this and stick them through the eyelet of the nose cone. Okay, and then you open those loops again, put the nose cone through and then pull it tight, and that'll make a knot down there. Now I'm not going to do that because I don't like to do that method. I like to use a snap swivel. Now you can find snap swivels like this just about any place that has fishing supplies. And the size doesn't make a whole lot of difference as long as the snap portion will fit over the eyelet like this, and when it's closed it should move freely without binding. Alright, if it's binding in one direction or another, then just get a little bit bigger one. So now we're going to go back here. I'm going to recheck my size. So again, looping them over one finger, and then the other hand we've got the center of the parachute sheet. Okay, I like where that is. And so once again we're going to scrunch down those loops even more. We're going to pass those through the swivel side, the round loop there. Okay, pass the loops through, regain them here, so put it back on your finger. Okay, now we're going to do the same thing that I just did with the nose cone. I'm going to pass the swivel through the loops, pull the loops down, and now I'm just going to pull those tight. Alright, recheck my length once more. If things shifted, you can go ahead and loosen this and try again. If all of the glue is dry on the body tube and the fin can, and so next we're going to add the fins themselves. Now the first thing I'm going to do is just dry fit these to make sure we don't have any problems. And they already feel like they're going to be kind of tight. Show. Okay, so in the instructions they have us applying glue to the fin and then sliding it in. And what I am worried will happen is you'll get that about halfway in, the glue will stick, and you got your fin stuck there. So I'm going to start then by going around here and continuing this with each of the fins here. and just dry fitting these initially. Yeah. Okay, it looks like all of these are going to need to be filed. Okay, so even with filing these, they're still really tight. Okay, so instead of trying to glue these first and then putting them in, I'm putting them in first, and I'm going to use some very low viscosity brush-on cement here. I'm just going to brush this into the seam of the fin and the fin can there, and just let that run itself down into the crack there, kind of by capillary action. And that should hold these fins on. The other nice thing about this, if you do happen to slop this over a little bit, don't try and wipe it or anything, just let it dry, and it's not very noticeable. I must say, this is not the highest quality kit here. There are a lot of imperfections, especially in the plastic parts. And with all the trouble the fins give me here, it's not even that good of a beginner's kit. Okay, we'll let that dry for a few minutes. Now, the last part we're going to put in is the shock cord, and this is the one that came with it. If I measure that here, that's only about 15 inches long. That's kind of short. What I'm afraid is going to happen a lot is that this is so short that when the nose gets ejected out, it's going to hit the end of that short cord and smack right back into the rocket. So if you have the material, I would suggest getting a longer shock cord. I would say at least 2 feet here. Okay, now if you don't, just go ahead and install this one. It's better than no shock cord. But I'm going to go see what I have in my shock cord box, and then we'll come right back. So about 3 or 4 years ago, I ran into a lot of the same problem where just the shock cords being included in some of the kits were just too small. So I invested in a whole roll of 1/8 inch wide elastic like this, and it'll probably last me at least another 5 years. All right, so this is going to go in just like most Estes kits do. So we've got a fold-up shock cord here. We just need to cut out. Now I'm going to do this a little bit different than the instructions show. So typically when you do these, you stick the shock cord here down the middle, and then you take this first part and you put glue all over it. You fold it up over the second part, you put glue all over that, fold it up over the third part. The problem when you do that is during those last 2 folds, the shock cord here folds directly upon itself, and it kind of bulges out into the interior of the rocket. And we prefer not to have that. So one way to do it is you can slant this a little bit so when it folds up it lays beside it. Or you can take some scissors here or a hobby knife and cut up the middle of this to make a fork in it here. Okay. And cut up about 25 millimeters, inch, somewhere in there. A little bit more than the second one is long. Alright, so now when this folds up, the two forked pieces go on either side of the shot cord, and it gives you a much more even cross section here when you go to fold the whole thing up. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and take some white glue or wood glue here. You can be fairly generous with this part because we're going to smear this all over. And when we fold this up, we want to eliminate as many of the air bubbles and gaps as we can, so that we just have a sandwich of paper, glue, and shot cord. Okay, so now I'm going to take my shot cord here, extend the forks out to the sides of that middle section. Alright, I'm going to fold this first bit over onto the forks. I'm going to fold that bit over onto the main part of the shot cord here. Okay, so now the forks are on either side of that, and we're going to squish this all down. And now I'm going to fold a curvature into this where the convex side is here. This is what's going to get glued to the inside of the rocket. So I'm going to put a little more glue on this. Okay, and again, spread that around evenly, get it up on that little bit of exposed shot cord there. Now this is going to go down inside the rocket, and it needs to go down at least 1.5 inches so that there's no chance of it interfering with the nose cone. So here I'm just going to slide this in a little bit. Alright, and if you have long skinny fingers, you can slide this down even further, that's better. Alright, I'm going to slide that down, and then I'm going to press it against the inside of the wall and in turn against my other hand here. Alright, I'm going to get that as flat as I can and get any air bubbles out of it. And let's see if I can position this so you can see it there. So, yeah, right down inside there you can see the anchor. It's a little bit out of focus, but you get the idea. Okay, go ahead and squish that a little bit more. Alright, and we'll let that dry off to the side. On the other end of this now, I can tie on the nose cone. And here, if you've already tied on the parachute, you'll have to put this next to it. Alright, if not, you just do it like I'm doing here. Alright, so I'm going to tie that with a double knot. Okay, and then pull it from all directions. Get that knot cinched down really well. And then cut the free end back here to about 1/4 inch or about 5 to 6 millimeters from the knot. Okay, and the reason I do that is to help prevent this from getting caught up in here between the shoulder and the body tube when we put the rocket together. If that happens, it can result in a failure of the recovery system to deploy. Alright, now we can hook on the parachute if you don't have it there already. And now I'm going to let this sit and the glue on the shot cord down in the mount to dry. I'm also going to put a little dab of glue right here, just like we did with the parachute shroud lines. Right, just enough to lock that knot in there. And now I'm going to let everything dry for about 10 minutes before we put it all together. Now that the glue has dried everywhere, we'll go ahead and put this together. Now if you're actually prepping this for launch, you'll probably want to put 2 pieces of recovery wadding loosely crumpled into here before you put everything else in. To fold the parachute, my new favorite method is to fold it in half and then match the corners over each other like I have here. Okay, so we have the center corners, and we're going to take one of the sides here, fold that over and line up the corners on that, and then take the other side, do the same thing, so that now we have kind of a kite looking shape. Take the shroud lines in roughly the middle, leave a little bit more coming out like this. So we're going to draw those up into our kite, and then fold over on each side, trapping the shroud lines there and making kind of a spike. And now take the tip of the spike and fold that down onto the corners. Okay, and then once you've got that, you can fold or roll the edges inward to make a cylinder like this. Now go ahead and stuff the shock cord down inside. It doesn't have to go any particular order or shape or whatever here, just stuff it. Alright, and then once you've got most of that down, slide the parachute in. Okay, and this should slide in fairly easily. If it's not, check and make sure nothing got caught, or make sure that your shock cord mount is not bulging inward. Alright, anything that's left here, just kind of tuck in. Alright, make sure that the snap swivel there is not sticking out to the side or anything, and then your nose should fit on easily. Now I can already tell this is going to fail the shake test. I didn't have to shake it. Alright, that means we need some more friction there. And so this is easily done by adding some masking tape to the shoulder. Now I could feel that was really loose, so I'm going to use a full circumference of masking tape here. Now we're not taping this onto the body tube, we're increasing the girth a little bit of the shoulder there so that it fits snugly. Alright, so we'll try this again. Fit everything in, making sure that we don't get something caught between the shoulder and the body tube. Okay, and that's still really loose. And I think part of that is just the low quality components in the kit. Alright, but we can go ahead and do this some more. There we go. Okay, now if we take this and shake it, it doesn't come out, but you should be able to pull it out relatively easily with just a little bit of tension there. Okay, like I said, this overall, this really isn't a high quality kit. It really doesn't live up to Apogee standards, even though Apogee is importing it. Given that, I think this should fly well. So this is my east wind here, and I hope you had a good time building this with me. Have a great flight and a safe recovery, and please stay tuned for more of my videos.